Leonard here. First, if you haven't watched the cinema camera and accessories breakdown video, I highly suggest you watch that before coming into this prep series. In that video, I teach you the names of all the gear and accessories of a professional cinema camera. Second, I had to break this camera prep series into 7 parts because the entire prep has over 3.5 hours of content. I've added chapters to all the videos so you can come back and rewatch something, or if you just want to skip over a section. And that's it. So grab a drink, some snacks, and get comfortable.
And here we go.
Welcome to Filmmaker Survival. This video is part of our First AC training series, and for this video we're going to be doing a full in-depth camera prep from start to finish. So by the end of this video you're going to understand everything that you need to do and prepare the camera and prep it for the job the next day. So we're going to do 3 builds today. We're going to do a studio prime lens build, we're going to do a handheld primes build, and a zoom studio mode build. So by the end of this, we should be able to switch as fast as possible between the 3 different modes, because on a job, you could very easily go from studio mode with primes to handheld, and then the next shot will be zoom, and then the next shot you'll have to go back to the primes. So we need to be able to be fast and efficient with all of our builds and make sure that everything works smoothly together. Now, one important thing to know is that each build is going to be different depending on which camera you're using and what lenses you're using and what you're going to be doing with the camera, whether it's going to be like handheld, studio, Steadicam, crane. So all of these things are going to determine how you're going to build it. I am going to do a future video on building for Steadicam, crane, and like Ronin and specialty stuff like that. But for now, we're just going to keep to a basic, simple camera prep that's very common. We're going to be working with an Alexa Mini, and we're at Panavision. So the cage on this is the Panavision cage, which is actually one of my favorite cages. This back plate will actually swing out. If you pinch these 2 red things together, it'll swing out and you can get to the media, and you can also swing out this way so you can get to the power button a little bit easier, or to the LEMO connections in the back for audio. All right, so before we get started, when I show up to a prep, I just like to walk through and look at all the different cases to make sure that I have all the basics ready to go so I can start building the camera. So before we start building, we're going to do that, and we're just going to walk through and see if there's anything that we need to write on the whiteboard. So whenever you're at a prep, there's whiteboards at your bay or in your room where you can just write down things that you need your prep tech to get, because every prep bay and room will have a prep tech that will work with you and grab all the little things that you need, or if you need to change something out. So this room has a whiteboard to the side and one behind the cameras here. So once we do a little walkthrough, I'll probably write down a few things that I know just right away that I'll want to add, because there's just stuff that, little pieces that I like to add on to make my build. So let's go ahead and we'll just do a little walkthrough and we'll check it out. All right, so first off, we have our body case. We've got a couple of things in here. We have a card reader and some media and a couple cables, power cable and an extra EVF cable. Here's our head case. We've got a part of our eyepiece leveler, and we have a microforce in here. And here's a Tango head. This is pretty cool. I'll show you what that does later when we get our studio build. Here's our accessories case. We have a studio swing away mat box with our mats. We have a manual follow focus, a speed crank, some handheld grips, spider grips, clip-on mat box, eyebrow and mats for the clip-on, and different length rods here, different sizes. And up top here we have our eyebrow for the studio mat box, a whip for the manual follow focus, and then another part of our eyepiece leveler. And then we have here our zoom. So we have our lens support, zoom lens. We got our rock and roll handle, which will be for the microforce. So this, we'll just grab this out here, and this will go in the rock and roll handle. And we've got some rods for our zoom. We have a 5-inch TV Logic. Probably won't use this. Then we have some filters, basic order. We'll probably add some filters. There's no diopters in here. You always want to get some diopters. Then we have our 7-inch or 7-inch small HD onboard monitor. Then over here I have my cart with my coffin and my Panavision bag. And we've got down here, we have our high hat, low hat, rolling spreaders, baby legs, standards, We've got 2 block batteries. Right now I only have 2. So if we're gonna be on dolly, I would definitely get at least 3 or 4. So that way you can just always have a hot one. And then we have our tear deck. Now this is my personal tear deck that I'll be using on the job. So I've got it here instead of from the rental house. And then I also have my own 17-inch OLED director's monitor or DP monitor, depending on if we have VTR or not. And then here we have our Cooke S4 lenses, our prime lenses. We have a 18, a 25, a 35, a 50, 75, and 100 mil. So over here we have our Preston Fizz, our 3-channel wireless follow focus. Besides focus, obviously we have focus here, but it also does iris and zoom. And then we have our 3 motors, the MDR, the controller. We have some brackets and a little mounting plate and our pre-marked rings. We also have a single channel. And the reason we have this, I'll get into that a little bit later. Even though we can do iris here, we're gonna do iris here, and I'll tell you why later. Over here we have our batteries. I unplugged them because of the fan noise. Typically, if I'm doing a 1-camera job, I'll at least get 12 batteries. So we'll probably add 4 more here, and then we have our Preston battery chargers. We've got a couple Preston batteries here. So right away, there's a few small things I want to add. So I'm going to write those on the whiteboard. One of them is for my focus motors. I like to do, instead of going off of the bridge plate down here, because we're going to be doing like studio to handheld, I don't want to go off of these rods down here on the bridge plate, because when we do handheld, I want to lose all of this. I want to lose all this here, because this, what the great thing about the Panavision cage is, there's a plate. It's the same plate on the top, but this whole thing will slide off, and then it'll make the camera way lighter and easier for handheld. So that's why I like to do a rod here with my motors hanging off the side. And there's a little bracket that they have here that I can go off the side with that. And then for our tear deck, I like to do like a 1-knuckle ultralight arm that has like a 1/4-20 and a 3/8. So the 3/8 is gonna go in here to the top handle, and then the 1/4-20 will go into the tear deck. Now the standard for mounting points on cameras and all the cages, for no matter what the camera is gonna be 1/4-20s, the smaller holes, and then 3/8, the larger hole. Those are standard across everything. So that's what you're gonna get a lot of your accessories are gonna have. They're gonna either have 3/8 or 1/4-20. Okay, so I think that's all I'm gonna need. Oh, for handheld, what I wanna do is with this Panavision cage is they have little rosettes that will go in here that will screw on here. It allows me to put the spider grip straight on to the body instead of, again, having to do rods for the spider grips. So it'll just it helps me lose all of this. So I'm gonna add 2 of those because I'll need 1 for each side. And then I think that's pretty much gets me going. I can start building the camera, and then I can start working on the lenses. We want to get to the lenses as fast as possible. So I like to put on, usually I'll put the monitor on first. I'll get the wireless focus on, the Preston, or whatever system I'm using. Sometimes I'll put the tear deck on later, or I'll put it on sooner. You can kind of you don't have to build this in any certain order. You can kind of do it however you want, but I highly recommend that you do the lenses first because it's the most time consuming. You'll see why later. All right, so let's start grabbing, I'll start with the monitor. So let's grab the monitor, the 7-inch, and we'll throw it on here. So when I'm doing my monitor here, I like to do off the front 3/8 here on this top handle. Now I'm just gonna tighten it a little bit right now to get it going. And then I'm gonna grab my C-wrench. I'm gonna give this a little bit of a tighten, a crank, because the weight is going to be hanging to the right, but so it'll tighten. But there are plenty of times where you're going to have to move the monitor on this side, and then its own weight will loosen it. So you really want to like get this real tight. So let me move this now over here. So now I'm just going to stick it in the side. This small HD 703 has threads, 1/4-20 threads on it, or holes on it. So I'm gonna put it on the side here, make sure I get it the right orientation. Put it in the middle, spin it around. All right, so one thing to know about the way on these little cages on here is that if you go too far in with the bolt, see it's going to start to hit. I don't know if you can see that gap, but it's going to start to hit. So we're going to back it off just a little bit and then tighten from here. All right, and now I've got the monitor up. And this is how I like to put it. All right, so now we've got our monitor. So now I'm going to put the power cables on, or power cable and BNC in. So if on the side here, there's in and outs and then power. So we'll just plug in our 2-pin LEMO. So this connector is called a LEMO connector, and it's 2-pin because inside there's 2 pins. So that's basically how we reference the different LEMO cables. Is it a 2-pin, 4-pin, 5-pin, 6-pin, 3-pin? And this is going to be our power for our monitor. And there's only one way to plug in a LEMO. And it's a little hard to see here, but I will show you on the other end. All right, let's get our BNC on the in. All right, so now what I like to do to kind of keep this a little tidy is I like to wrap it around the Noga arm once or twice, depending on the length, and then bring it, and then I'll bring it around to the out on the camera. The nice thing about this cage is that they have jumpers that go from the camera to this plate, and it has extra SDI outs on it. And they're a lot easier to get to too. And then now we'll do the same thing with our power. I'm gonna get this a little bit neater. You want to keep your cables neat. You don't want a rat's nest and things loose and sticking out because they'll get caught and they just get in the way. So now we're going to look for our 2-pin on the power accessory power, and we're just going to go straight into this one here with our 2-pin LEMO. So the way that this goes in is there's a red dot, and there's usually a red dot on here, but they get worn out. But then there's this little notch, this little keyway, and then you just line it up and then it goes in. There's no other way to plug it in. So if you can't find it right away, just don't push real hard, just kind of rotate it and then gently put some force on it, and then it'll just go right in real easy. So while this is built, what are the reasons why I have a 7-inch monitor on the camera instead of a 5-inch is because a lot of DPs will like to have the larger monitor. Some prefer the smaller ones. Personally, when I'm shooting or if I'm operating, I like a 5-inch monitor. I have my small HD 5-inch that I use for my onboard monitor because it's just a lot lighter, and it's just a little more ergonomic and easier for when you're doing handheld and things like that. But some DPs, a lot actually, and even operators like to have that larger image, but it just comes down to personal preference. So if you get a chance, talk to your operator and see if they, one, if they're bringing their own monitor, and two, if they're not, ask them what size monitor they prefer, or even what type of monitor they prefer. And if you, for some reason, you can't get a hold of them, maybe they're busy, they're working, and you just can't get in contact with them, bring options for both. Bring a 5-inch and bring a 7-inch. So now we've got our monitor on, let's throw on our tear deck. All right, so here's that Noga with the 1/4-20 and the 3/8 that the Prep Tech bought. So I'm just gonna throw this straight on the back here. All right, let's do this. Grab our receiver or transmitter. Now, when you do this, I highly recommend that the way that I do it, and you should probably do it this way too, is put the lock for the Noga and also your in and outs for power and BNC, put them on the dumb side, the right side of the camera body, because that way when your operator is doing any handheld or just getting close to the camera, they're not sticking out and poking them in the head. It also mess up the cables and stuff like that. So you just don't want them getting bumped. All right, so let's throw on power. Again, I like to wrap around the arm however many times I can. You want to keep it loose. You don't want to be real tight. Just get a little bit of slack, just enough so it's not loosely hanging out all over the place. Do the same thing with our B and C. We'll just wrap it one time. We'll put it down here and the other out. We're good. And then we'll just grab some antennas and we'll throw them on. All right, so now we're at a point where I'm going to power up the camera. We're just getting AC power right now. So I'm going to make sure that's turned on. All right, and then I'll throw a battery on there just because. All right, I think I might actually turn off this AC power because there's a fan. I don't want it to mess up the audio. So we'll just turn that off for now. So we have power. So to turn on the Alexa Mini, it's this power button right here. You just press it once. And you don't have to swing this away. You can put your finger up in there. It's not bad. So one thing I kind of jumped over without even thinking about it is that obviously you want to add a focus monitor for yourself. So whatever focus monitor you prefer, that's what you'll add. Either you'll get it from the rental house, or if you own your own, you'll rent it on the job, your personal monitor as crew gear. So if you're unsure about crew gear and stuff, I made a video about crew gear, so make sure you watch that one. So a lot of people like to use the small HD 13-inch monitors. Personally, I like the 7-inch TV Logic. That's just how I've been for a long time. I like TV Logics, but these are kind of, and then the newer ones of these 13 inches are what everyone likes to use. So just make sure that you add your own focus monitor to the order, because that's your job. All right, back to it. Okay, so now let's put on our Preston Fizz, our wireless follow focus. That's going to be a little more finicky. We're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna make that work. So typically, since this is gonna be a handheld build, a lot of times if we're mostly studio, just gonna be living dolly, I'll use a different plate. There's like a 90-degree plate that'll go straight down and then out flat, and I'll put the MDR there, and then I'll have this floating above it. But because we're doing handheld, I'm gonna put a plate on the side here. So the MDR will live here. And then again, we'll put the rod out here for the motors. So before we do that, let's throw a lens on. So if you notice here on this camera, we have the mount and we have an adapter. This lens is a PL mount lens. The reason we're adapting is because Panavision has their 70mm mount, and this allows you to use their large format lenses on the Mini, and then to use the PLs or the PV lenses, Panavision lenses, you just use the appropriate adapter. So the Cook's S4s are PL, so we're going to use the PL adapter. But something to notice is that if you're ever using Panavision lenses that are PV mounted, they have this little pin on the lens. There's this little pin on the mount because we're adapting, so it has it as well. So there's a pin here, and then there's a hole here. And so all Panavision lenses have this pin and hole, and they can only go on the camera one way. So you have to make sure that that pin is at the bottom, otherwise it will not go on. So let's put that on. But like with PL, there is a pin on the mount, right? Up in the top corner here. But with PL, theoretically, well, in practice, you could put this lens on any way you want, and it's not going to affect the image or anything. Typically, you want to put it on the right side up so you can see all your markings and everything like that. But it's just go to say that Panavision lenses will only go on one way. So that's something to notice, like if you're using PL anamorphics, make sure you put that lens on right, because if you do put an anamorphic lens on the wrong way, it will mess up the image. The lens is not working the way it's supposed to. It's going to squeeze the image the wrong way. So make sure that if you're doing PL anamorphic, that you have the lens in the correct orientation. But like again, Panavision won't allow you to do that. So it's not as big of a concern. All right, so we've got the lens on. So now we can see we've got our two gears. So let's put on that side bracket, and we'll get a rod here. So I've got it here. Again, the prep tech brought this to me a little earlier. So we grab have to grab my Allens here. All right, so I'll just throw this on. I'm gonna do it up like this. I'm gonna tighten it really good because you don't want any wiggle with that rod. You need that rod to be solid as a rock, because if it wiggles, it could jump off the gears. The motors could jump off the gears. All right, so now this is a 15 mil rod. So I'm gonna get like one of the short 15 mil rods from our accessory case. So with this, I think I'm gonna try to use this short one because our gears are pretty close to the mount, and also they're gonna be uniform. The Cook S4s, all the housings are the same. So the gears are in the same spot on every single lens. So there might be an exception of one or two lenses, but because there's a wide range of them, but I'm pretty sure like every single one is in the same spot. The set that we're using, they all are on the same spot. So for this case, yes, I don't have to worry about that. So I think if I can just put the rod here, we'll try that, and we'll see if we can get our motors to fit on with the two gears here. So we've got 3 different motors. So we have this is the DM1X, which is the stronger motor. It has the fat gear, so we're gonna use this for focus, and then we're gonna use one of the smaller ones, the DM2s, for iris. I'm gonna try to put this right here. I'm gonna put this here, put that under there. So this plate, luckily it already has soft side Velcro. The only thing is I think we're gonna have to put some hard side on our MDR to get it to go on here. So I think we're gonna put it kind of in this orientation here. Something to remember is that when you're putting Velcro on the camera, it's always soft side on the camera and hard side on the accessory. You never want hard side on your camera body. The reason why is, hard side, it'll scratch your hands up. You're handling the camera a lot, and your second is, your operator is, and hard side Velcro is really rough, and it can really hurt you. And it also will, can scratch other things if the camera bumps into something or whatever. So, you always want to do soft side on your camera body. All right, so let's grab, I've got some Velcro here. So let's measure this out here. So something like that. We'll do 2, and then we can just take this other one. Just copy it. Okay, cool. Just like right to the edge. Let's grab our other one. We'll line it up right there. Okay. All right, now we're just going to stick it right there. It's pretty good. So this wiggles a little bit. It's not really something you want because this thing, the camera moves around a lot, and this is just going to keep wiggling. It's going to get loose and loose, and it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. So what I think I'm going to do is we'll take this plate off, and I think we're just going to put a little bit of hard side here, like a strip here, thin strip here, and I'm going to put some here, so that'll keep the plate from rotating. So now we'll add our strip of soft side onto the camera. All right, and now we can put this back on. Make sure it's good and tight. Give it a little push. There. Now it's solid. Now the plate is not moving. There's a little bit of, like, tiny bit of wiggle here, but that's fine. Nothing's loosening. Nothing's going around. This is good. Now Steadicam, if you're doing Steadicam, they may still not like that little bit of wiggle. Depends on the operator, because they don't want any weight shifting at all when they're doing Steadicam, because it can mess up the operating. But this seems pretty solid. All right, so let's start working on our motors. So let's get the iris motor in first. So this is a hill bracket. So this is the way this works, is it goes in here, and then you put your rod here on the rod there. And this can actually change to the other side as well. So if you need to get this in a different orientation, you can. So let's try and see if we can get this to work. Let's see, I'm gonna put this one here. I like to go underslung with my motors because, gravity kind of helps you keep the gear in contact with the motor, or because gravity helps the motor, you know, the weight of the motor go down onto the gear. So if we look here, I can't do this because if I do this, I'm not going to be able to get to my focus gear. So I have nowhere to put this focus motor. So what I'm going to have to do is I think I'm going to try, let's just try flipping this, going this way. So if I go this way and move this bracket over here, this way, now I can get to my iris motor a lot easier. And then see, like the gravity just automatically makes it go onto the gear. All right, so make sure this is tight. And I don't want to press it too hard onto the gear because then it'll bind. So just get enough so it's nice and snug inside, lined up in the gear, and just kind of tighten this. Now I will say, one thing you want to do is when you're getting, if you're using these hill brackets and these other brackets, is get backups. I've had these things break all the time on me on set. And if you don't have them, you can't put your motor on your camera. So always get backups of these. If I'm doing like a really long job, I'll get multiple backups because sometimes you'll have a couple of them break over like weeks or months on a job. So even on short jobs, you never know, because people really crank on these and they just get stressed over time, and then you'll put a little bit too much and it'll just snap. Yeah, people will crank on these as well. So make sure you get backups of these brackets too, because these will pop as well. What I think I'm going to do, since we're going to be doing battery power for this, I'm not going to run the AC power because of the fan for the recording of the video. I'm going to ask for a shark fin. And this is something I always ask for on every single job, is a shark fin that goes on the back and allows you to hot swap batteries, and also gives you more battery life out of the camera. So I'm going to write that down on the whiteboard. All right, we'll get that at some point. I have no rush on that, but we'll get it. All right, okay, so now we've got our iris motor on. So now let's figure out how we can get our focus monitor. All right, so let me see here. So this is gonna go, I'm gonna try to do this. So I can't do that. That's not gonna work, right? So let's see if we can, so I can go like this. If you can see here, I can get that. But the issue now is that my rod is not long enough. My rod here is not long enough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swap this rod out for a longer rod, and then I should be able to get both motors on here. Okay, so now I've got this rod. I think if I just come out to here, it should be good. We can always adjust. So let's throw back our iris motor on. Give that a little tighten. Now let's throw on our focus. So the reason why I like to use the hill brackets more is because these, you can't move this motor up and down as easily. So like I can't reach, if you can see here, like I can't reach. But with the hill bracket, you can slide it up and down. You can get the motor in different places. Now, you can ask them for a motor. Like if I really want to, I can get a motor that has the hill brackets on it instead of this on it. So we might change that out later. But for now, we're just going to get this going so we can start working on our lenses. Because like I said, this is going to be the most time-consuming thing, figuring out everything with these lenses. So let's get that there. Like I've got enough room here on my rod. So let's get this snug here. And I've got enough room here in between my motors. Okay, so it looks like I've got both my motors here. The reason why I don't want to go on top with the focus motor is because I may need to move this eyepiece bracket out, and it's going to bump. And then I might need to get it way out, depending on where the operator wants the viewfinder. So I'm going to keep this area clear. And I also don't want to go too far out this way because I need to make sure I can get my clip-on matte box on all the lenses. So we'll throw up all the lenses at some point and make sure that this rod length is okay with all the lenses. Because yes, they're the same uniform housing, but they are different lengths. So we'll play around with that. All right, so now we've got this going. Let's throw our cables on. Let's power up our MDR and let's get our motor cables plugged in. So the cool thing with the Preston is this one cable, this power cable, will also do start-stop. So we just come over here and we find the blue port, LEMO port, that says camera, and we'll just line up that red dot with that little red mark. And now we've got our power and our start-stop from this one cable. And for tidying this, let's see how we want to run this. We might just have to coil this and then plug it in. So we're going to look for, there's a 3-pin LEMO cable, connector in here, port in here. So we're going to, usually the red dot goes up. So I'm going to find the red dot, put it up, and then I'm going to just stick it in there, and then there we go. And now we have power. So let's do our iris motor. It's going to go this way, and I'm going to bring this up over here because again, I don't want cables hanging out. And then I'm going to come behind these cables, and then on the MDR, we're looking for the port that says focus, as F for, or sorry, this is iris. So we're looking for iris. So we're looking for the one that has a little eye on it, and then we're going to just line up this LEMO. Plug it in. All right, so now it automatically start calibrating once you plug it in. So let's do the same thing for focus monitor. I'm going to come up this way. Maybe I'll come up. I don't want to come up this way because it might get caught with that iris motor and that gear. So I'm going to come up this way. And then for focus, we just look for the one that says F. See, there's one that says F. We'll just line it up, plug it in, and then now that one is going to calibrate. So the cool thing about the Preston is if, say, for some reason one of your motors pops off the gear, you don't have to recalibrate everything. You can just pull the cable from the one motor you want to recal, and then it'll just automatically do it once you plug it back in. So that way you don't have to redo all of them, which can take a little bit longer. Unless you have to, you can do that. To calibrate all the motors at the same time, we're just going to look for this calibrate button. It's got this little cover around it so you can't accidentally bump it. It's right here. It's hard to see in profile. So you can see it's right here. So you just push that and then it calibrates all the motors at the same time. And you'll want to do that whenever you're reprogramming a new lens. You want to calibrate all the motors at the same time.